On Point is brought to you by National Baking Company.
Good evening and welcome to On Point. I'm your host, Kalila Reynolds.
And I'm Dennis Chung.
How are you doing, Dennis?
I'm good, Kalila.
Well, one of the hottest topics over the past couple of weeks has been property taxes. Many people were in for a rude awakening when they went online and checked their property taxes for this year and realized, hold on, it's gone up by a lot.
Significantly. Rates of even between 1,000 and 3,000%, I heard. But in response to that, Audley Shaw, the finance minister, last Tuesday announced some changes to property tax rates, which are a lot more palatable.
Yes, we'll get into that tonight, but first, let's take a look back at some of the top business stories this week.
Number 6 is the New Silk Road. The first ever freight train from Britain to China started its mammoth journey on Monday along a modern-day Silk Road trade route as Britain eyes new opportunities after it leaves the European Union. The 32-container train, around 600 meters long, left the vast London Gateway container port laden with whiskey, soft drinks and baby products bound for Yiwu on the east coast of China. The 12,000-kilometer-long journey is expected to take 18 days. In at number 5 is the oil scandal in Nigeria. Multinational oil and gas company Shell has admitted for the first time that it dealt with a convicted money launderer when negotiating access to a vast oil field in Nigeria. It comes after emails were published showing Shell negotiated with Dan Itit, who was later convicted of money laundering in a separate case. Shell and an Italian oil company paid $1.3 billion to the Nigerian government for access to the field. At number 4, Jamaica has a new Commissioner of Customs. Velma Ricketts Walker replaces retired Major Richard Reese. She comes with over 17 years' experience and has previously served as Assistant Commissioner of Compliance and Enforcement. At number 3, Jamaicans' household debt is rising faster than their income. According to the Bank of Jamaica, more than half of every dollar of disposable income went towards paying debt in 2016. That's 54 cents compared to 33 cents 10 years ago. The BOJ says Jamaicans are increasing their debt appetite with cars, homes and microfinance loans in greater numbers. The number 2 spot goes to United Airlines, one of the most talked about businesses this week, and not for a good reason. A video of airline employees dragging a man off the plane provoked outcry on social media. The footage taken inside the airliner shows a man being violently pulled out of his seat and dragged down the aisle as passengers prepared to take off from Chicago to Louisville on Sunday evening. The passenger David Dow lost 2 front teeth, suffered a broken nose and a concussion. He's suing the airline. And their top business story this week is the reduction in property taxes. The government caved into public pressure this week following intense backlash over the increased taxes. Finance Minister Audley Shaw announced on Tuesday that the tax rate would be reduced to a range of 0.5 to 0.9%. As a result, more than half of all property owners will now see their taxes either reduced or staying the same. However, a few people, mostly with commercial properties, are still facing massive increases of up to 600%.
And when we come back, the latest on property taxes right here on Point. Welcome back. Well, the government announced significant changes to its property tax regime on Tuesday.
This after widespread complaints that increases resulting from higher land valuations were too drastic and too sudden. Here's more on that.
Regarding the tax rates, Mr. Speaker, after further review and in response to widespread concerns, we have made the following changes to further reduce the tax liabilities. We have retained the flat $1,000 tax on all properties valued up to $400,000. We have introduced a progressive tax regime with 8 bands ranging from a low of 0.5% to a high of 0.9%. Mr. Speaker, this is a big reduction from the tax rates announced recently that range from 0.8% to a high of 1.3% of the land value. I should make it clear that this is a progressive rate structure, just as obtained in the case of personal income taxes. It is a far superior regime than the one that obtained under the previous government, where only 3 tax bands existed at rates of up to 2% of land values over $1 million. Under the new regime, if a property is valued at $1.7 million, which is in the 0.6% tax band, the owner will still benefit from the flat $1,000 for the first $400,000, as also from the lower rates up to $1.5 million. So he or she would really only pay 0.6% on the values between $1.5 million and $1.7 million. He or she doesn't pay 0.6% on the total value of that property and benefit from all the lower taxes as well. With this change, Mr. Speaker, in the tax rates, 448,360 owners of these parcels of land, or 58% of the 776,000 properties, will now see a reduction or no change in their property tax.
And we're joined now by the Chief Technical Advisor to the Minister of Finance, that's Senator Aubin Hill, and also President of the Realtors Association, Edwin Witt. Welcome to On Point.
Very good to be here.
Welcome, gentlemen. Let me start with you, Senator. First of all, I'd like to commend the government for listening and rolling back the taxes. And it shows a responsiveness. But wasn't some impact study done before to sort of know that this was going to be the reaction?
You know, Dennis, you and I are from the private sector.
Yes.
And when you're going to launch a product, I remember launching a product when I was at NCB, the multiple salary product that we launched that changed the landscape in Jamaica. When you're going to launch a product like that that says you're going to give 11 times your salary, you have all kinds of opinion, from absolutely not to yes, it's great, and in between. And you're still going to have to make a decision. Now, you have government cabinet ministers and MPs who are from across the island. Mm. You know how many of the associations we talk to that represent business, that we talk to people. MPs went home, listened to their constituents. And so you come up with a tax plan that should really have been done 15 years ago, because the last valuation that was really followed was 2002. It was delayed. That's a big problem, because now you're going to have to do it. Now, if we delay it till next year, it's going to be worse. So we had to make the courageous decision to go ahead and do it. What happened, in fact, at the time we said, okay, 272,000 people will pay much less or the same. And you still had, because there are 3 variables we're looking at, ladies and gentlemen. One is the valuation. The valuation is set by law. We can't change it. As long as it's done in a best practice manner, and both sides, the PNP and the JLP side said that it was done properly. Once that is done, the valuation is set. You can't change it. But all the discussion you've heard, Dennis, is de-linked from the valuation. The valuation is the basis of everything, because the next variable of the 3 is the rate of taxes,
right,
which the government decides, which is what we decided from 0.8 to 1.3, which turned out to be quite high. And the next factor that you have to look at is the composite of those 2. What do you get when you multiply the valuation by the rate? Well, we saw what the reaction was. We listened. We heard the pain. And we talked to a lot of people, and we went back and moved the bottom rate down to 65% of what it was.
But you saw what the reaction was after it was announced in Parliament. Dennis was asking you about, wouldn't you have foreseen this reaction? Because what was announced in Parliament, and I said on a different occasion, was simply a half-truth. You told, not you, but Minister Shaw told the people that yes, the property taxes are coming down or staying the same for 272,000 people, but he didn't say the other half of the equation, that it's going up for more than 500,000.
Well, in fact, when you look at the data that was presented, it would have indicated, because he said how many property, there were 766. If 272 are going to be the same or the less, the balance is going to go up. Fine.
I think the problem is the amount and the way it just hit one time.
Let me tell you something, Dennis, what happens. I've seen people who have their property values go up by 1,000%, 10 times. But even if the taxes go up 200%, that is 2/10 of the amount that 20% of what the amount of the valuation. The cash flow problem, how do I pay that amount of money even if my value has gone up, is the issue.
Yes.
So we heard that, but people don't want to talk about the valuation. We understand that.
Yeah.
We heard that, but we still have to say, look, all right, we heard you. And you're never going to get it, no matter what we did. We reduce this now, and people are still going to complain.
Well, I mean,
you just have to try the best you can do.
I think there are commendations for the way it was dealt with. I mean, initially, I think the reaction was at the problem. But Eddie, what your view from a realtor's point of view? What was the immediate impact of this that you saw?
Well, I would say relief. Okay.
After today's announcement.
Of the minister's announcement.
Yeah. Yes. But initially, when it was announced,
the initial announcement was shock and awe. And the one today was relief. It was untenable.
I mean, you would have been rumspell in that situation, right? The shock and awe.
I like relief, actually, if you don't mind.
Shock and awe, Bush era.
Go ahead, Eddie. You were saying.
So the first situation was definitely untenable. That was too much shock in the system. The adjustments in the market would have produced some unfavorable results. So, in the balance, I would say that was not the right move to have made at that point. The changes that I've heard today, although we still need to get more details to look at the bands and how the different tax rates apply to which bands and so on the face of it, I would say it looks much better, much more palatable. But a little more detail when that comes out, we'll have a better sense of where we are.
We will like that.
But I would say again, at this point, that how it was done before would have created quite a bit of chaos. But where it is now, it looks more reasonable. It's a little bit more reasoned approach. And I think when we get more information, we can do a little more research into it. I think it will all go well.
In what way would the chaos have unfolded?
Mostly on the high end, where you had instances of 1,300% increase. And if you're looking at a portfolio...
In the liability.
In the tax.
In the tax liability.
Right. And coming back to what the Senator said about the cash flow and how to manage your resources to meet your obligations, it would have been untenable for most. And so we couldn't see, we are concerned, we are advocates for all consumers, Charlie landowners. So we're heartened by the change that has been announced today. As I said, although there are some more details to have, but on the face of it, it looks much more palatable now.
May I just say something here about palatability? Not only did we move it from 0.8 to 1.3 down to 0.5 to 0.9, but what happens is, let's say I have a property of 10 million, okay? And in fact, I tell you, 97.96% of the properties in Jamaica are 10 million below. All the parcels of land in Jamaica, 97.96% are 10 million below. So let's say I have a property of 10 million. Now, let's say the rate at 10 million, looking at my paper here, is going to be about between 0.7% and 0.75%. Lower than 0.75%.
A $10 million property would pay how much?
About
valuation?
Oh no, and that's what I'm going to tell you. $10 million property is not going to pay 0.7%, the highest rate for 10 million. It will pay, for instance, on the first 1,000, it only pays 1,000.
Right.
On the first
On the
400,000.
and first 400,000. 400 to 800, it pays 0.8. 800 to 1.5, 0.85. So you see that you're going to be paying something substantially less than 0.7 of 10 million.
So the 0.7 doesn't apply to the entire 10
No,
million.
because the Prime Minister especially was very forceful about this being a progressive rate of tax.
So how much does it work out to on a dollar figure?
I don't have that exact figure here with me. I haven't worked out the 10 million, but I'm showing you how much cheaper it will be. Than, let's say, 0.7 of 10 million, you just do the figures, it's going to be a small amount of a couple thousand. 70,000. 70,000.
Yeah.
Okay, but
so
it's going to be much less than 70.
Okay.
I would think that it's going to be in the probably 50,000 region.
Right.
So then the government will end up taking home significantly less than it had initially projected?
About 2.1 billion less. Than we had projected under the higher rates that we had announced about a month ago.
On that, though, the 2 billion less, people have been asking, how's the government going to make up for that 2 billion?
Good question.
My personal view is that the government doesn't need to, because with the shift to consumption taxes, the increased compliance efforts, and the fact that already last year government was ahead of the targets, it would be difficult to come back to people at this point in time. I mean, because the money, you're going to make more than $2 billion in terms of that shift.
You know, Dennis, I'm so glad you said that. When you're dealing though with our multinational partners or multilateral partners, they're not interested about what.
Yeah, but your government
compliance.
and you have to know what is best for the Jamaican people.
Let me just take out compliance, but I'm agreeing with you because last year when we look at the tax that tax administration was able to collect,
much better.
It's 6 billion, more than 6 billion over. So we're not going to be worried about coming back for
the 2 billion. Right.
But we don't want to.
So you're verifying that now, confirming that now, that we're not going to go back for the 2 billion.
I'm confirming that we fully expect not to come back about that 2.1.
So you got some news there, Khalil.
So you're leaving that out there for now, for this year, for this fiscal year.
What I said was under 2.1, I fully expect not to come back.
Right.
Because, well, the economy is growing.
Yes.
We have seen, remember now,
Yes.
also that 1.5 that the other side castigates. People have more money now. That's going to spend. We're going to get more we're going to get more indirect taxes from it. So we fully expect.
And people can't escape indirect taxation.
No.
And I mean, Eddie, we couldn't deal with another shock and awe in the real estate sector, right?
No. In fact, we want to make sure. What I want to do is, and we haven't talked about this enough, and I want to stress this. People, the compliance rate on property tax is about 53%. That means 48, 45% of the people not paying their property taxes.
Which means that there's about $4 to $6 billion out there.
No, the amount of money we have in arrears is about 13.5 billion.
But I mean on an annual basis.
On an annual basis, you're looking betwing $4 to $6 billion. Right. So if we get that, and we expect to get a lot more of it because we're going to put in compliance measures that will get people to, and this discussion will get people to understand that you have to pay your taxes, and we're going to make sure we encourage you to pay your taxes. But also where people can't pay their taxes, the minister disclosed 7 or so measures where you can question the valuation. You're going to the tax administration people and say, look, I'm a pensioner, I'm poor, this is my fixed income, I need some help. And we've been discussing all kinds of ways to make that become much more palatable and payable by people.
Well, Edwin, you're hearing some more of the details now that you are asking about. What do you make of this progressive structure of the tax?
No, I have all that information right here.
Eddie has here all day.
The detailing is how the various bands, how the various tax rates apply at the various bands. But in principle,
Which I have here, but you might not have.
the easy calculation, which he did at the 10 million, it shows a certain amount of reduction.
Right.
I know that in the low end, even from before the reduction, you had a few people who had indicated a reduction on relatively flat.
It's a lot more than few that just
There are
don't
about
speak nearly as
200,000
much.
people
There were
who saw-
272,000. There are now
reduction.
438,000. But those people don't go on Cliff's program in the day and talk. They just get their benefit.
Well, good news is not news.
Good news is not news.
People were concerned, and so a lot of people were afraid to check the tax.
Yeah.
I believe now,
That's true too.
and it will take some
Yes.
time, I believe.
Well, what had to happen? The minister had to announce it today, so we have to now get the notices out, which is why I contended in another program that you can't say wait another month, as Peter Bunting was saying in Parliament, this MP Bunting this afternoon, because you wait and
No,
you have to
I
send
agree.
out those
I agree.
notices, and that
Yeah.
means the whole first quarter will have been lost.
I agree.
Of not collecting
And I
your
mean-
taxes. You can't do that.
No, and I mean waiting. Actually, I mean the opportunity cost of that.
It's very high.
You know, so I mean.
Yes, but now that the figures that people owe have changed, do you extend the deadline for them to pay? How does that work?
No, because there is in law, when you get it, you have a certain period of time. Once the notice is mailed, that's when the clock starts, or that's when you begin to have to pay, whatever it is, 30 or 90 days, then you have the time to pay, and it tells you. So yes, the time starts not from when we announced it the first time, but because we've changed it now, we're going to send out new notices, which is one reason we could wait for another month to have another month of discussion and not send out the notices.
But even with this increase, Eddie, this reduction, you know, which we must commend the government for, you're still going to see a little pass-through effect in terms of to tenants, right?
Yes, you definitely will see that, especially in the commercial side. And as you can see, the average increase now for commercial is still 58%. So
And a lot of MSMEs are involved in that.
that is correct. So you are going to be seeing still some correction in the market.
As rents come up for renewal, as contracts come up for renewal.
Well,
What happens there?
not even before it comes up for renewal in a commercial sense, because where you have rent and maintenance separate in the lease,
Right.
the maintenance is always subject to change,
Yeah.
and therefore you can.
And includes property tax.
It's going to be
Yeah.
So you're going to have a knock-on. You're going to have that knock-on immediately for as of April 1.
But also, one of the things that I want, and why I want to stress on valuation, the valuation that we give here is going to be the basis why many people go to banks and get more money. I'll give you an example. We had an issue where somebody complained that their tax had moved from, it's a big property, important property, had moved from like 200, like 10 million to 20 million. I'm just using those figures. It was actually more. I won't give the figures. When we went and we checked, because they complained, when we went and we checked around, that same person complaining had put the property value had gone up by let's say to 245 million. When we went, they have put the property on the market for $3 billion. That's what they expect to get something between 2 and 3 billion for the property.
So the government's valuations are still grossly undervalued?
In
That's what
some
you're saying?
instances, but in some it hits it. You can't hit them all.
The issue though is that, and this is where the rubber hits the road. And I don't think anyone is arguing, no one argues about the fact that we need new valuations and all of that.
And that valuations are good for the most part.
Yeah, and they're
Yes.
very good.
Yes.
They're very good. So, I mean, I don't think anyone can argue with an increase. The problem was with the shock and awe that we spoke about is that when you have property values, it's unrealized.
It's not cash.
Right, and
It's
you have
not
the cash flow to deal
And you
with.
have to pay taxes
Yeah.
in cash.
So that would have been the issue.
Yes,
yeah.
sure. It was.
The thing is, appreciation in your property values is a good thing.
Yeah,
The tax was the issue.
yeah.
Okay. So as a consequence, people were even complaining about their property values. But
Yeah.
I would like to remind them that the higher the appreciation of your property, the better the property.
It means you made a good investment.
The more valuable your assets are and better for you. So with this new tax regime applied to those values, And for the most part, in the past week or two, I've been testing some of those values, especially out in the countryside where you don't have a lot of comparable sales to look at. Right. And when we have done our analysis, because my firm also is a valuation firm, and we have been testing some of the values, and they're fairly decent, fairly reasonable, fairly on par with market or close. As a matter of fact, in a few instances, it might be even higher. Okay, but again, the remedies are there for you to appeal. To appeal. And because there are certain circumstances and situations where, but they keep reminding you, it doesn't. Not that you don't have to appeal if the value is only low. You can appeal if the value is high.
I don't think anybody will be doing that.
Because
be very careful.
The issue is, especially for residential properties, if you live in the home, you own the home and you live in the home, you're not earning increased income from the home because of the increased value, and so you don't have the extra money to pay the extra property tax.
Cash flow.
Yeah, but on that point, let's take a break. We'll come back with more. Welcome back to On Point. We're speaking property taxes with the Minister of Finance's Chief Technical Advisor, Aubin Hill. That's Senator Aubin Hill, and also Edwin Wint. He's the president of the Realtors Association. Aubin, one of the things that I heard the minister mention in Parliament on Tuesday was this, well, the bill was actually tabled in January to allow for increased valuations annually based on things like the annual consumer price index. Tell us how that will work.
Well, what the minister suggests is that what we will do, we are looking to do in the future. What actually happened was that the property taxes were started in 2010, completed in September 2013, were never put in place. In fact, I have a piece written by Balfour Henry where Minister Phillips actually did go to Parliament in February of 2015 with 2 or 3 bills, and they weren't passed. And Minister Shaw today made it very clear that really and truly, in a technical legal sense, property taxes have been collected illegally for the past 4 years or so, more than 4 years, well, since 2013, because the act was never passed through Parliament. We're going to fix that, but we're also going to make sure that this 15-year hiatus between when you actually, it should be 5 years. So do it 5 years. We've now asked Commissioner Eric Allen of the Land Commissioner to say, look, get ready, get prepared, so that we can start the process to get to a place where we're doing it every 5 years, starting.
But even before the 5 years, it's going to go up every year based on things like the
unless we change the law, which we're planning to do.
So it's every 5 years.
So we do an evaluation every 5 years. In the interim between the 5 years, you index it to the consumer prices.
So you will have increases every year once that law is passed.
No, inflation could. I mean, we have had
negative inflation.
Well, the inflation reducing to something close to nothing.
And especially if we're continuing on the
path. If we continue to grow and we continue to manage our country well, the increases will be infinitesimal.
Minimal, 2%, 1%, or something like that. Yeah. But it brings me to another point, though. And it is this, and both yourself and Edwin can weigh in on it. Shouldn't some accountability rest on the land valuation people who should have been doing this every 5 years?
I can tell you, my straight answer to that would be no. And I tell you why. I didn't see any land valuation people go out for election. They never go to run to do any Jamaican.
No, but they know that they should have been doing this.
They cannot do it unless they're funded. They have to get the funding. Who does the funding? The government. So no, don't move the responsibility. The responsibility only comes to the land valuation people when they're properly funded, when they've been given the instruction to do it and they haven't done it. That didn't happen.
So land valuation is like NSO meeting.
Precisely. You know, I'm so glad you bring it up, because unless you're funded, Dennis, you know you can't do it, no matter what your charter says. So no, I won't put the responsibility. I'm not, I'm quite willing to lay the responsibility on whoever it is. In this instance, it's the government, and we must fix it, and we're going to fix it.
From a property point of view, it's important that we do these things, because the vibrancy of the commercial market is very important. The real estate market,
Very important, but also planning.
Yeah.
One needs to be able to plan ahead. In other words, we used an example earlier of the commercial property market, rental market especially, and what is likely to happen now. Now you imagine someone who has 20,000 square foot of space, and the increase that is likely to, because don't forget that New Kingston properties, the values appreciated quite well. And so therefore the tax...
So you're in a much better position now,
exactly.
And your balance sheet looking nice.
But it's going to have a knock-on effect on the obligations of the tenants. So if you get to the point of indexation, one can plan ahead.
Yes.
When you're doing these budgets, you just cannot plan for property tax, especially as we said in the past 13, 14 years. We had some adjustments 4 years ago, and that was adjusting the tax rate, not the values.
Not the values.
Okay? As I keep saying, appreciation in property values is a good thing. You want your property to be appreciating. It's a tax obligation that's connected to that one needs to be able to budget for and to plan. Okay? Otherwise, it's going to have...
Which is why the shock and awe effect doesn't work.
There's another concept that you don't hear discussed very often, that regular valuation and indexation will help with as well. The truth is, Jamaica, like most any other country, unless you invade other people's country, we have limited land. We can't invade very much of the sea. Therefore, one good thing about properly administered, properly governed property tax issues is that you try to get the optimal use out of the property. Let's say I have a property of 50 acres sitting down by Martha Bray, or 1.5 acre in Jacks Hill sitting down, and because the property taxes are so low, I have no incentive. I have no incentive to use that land properly, or sell it to Dennis, who will do a good job of using the land. So some of that has to come out as well as we look at changing the way we handle property taxes. But in the interim, right now, we're making sure that people, because of this shock and awe after 15 years, will find a way to be able to pay it and get to a place where we get to a more level and even regular changes in the values of property. We hope that will continue to go up, because that means the country is doing well.
As you mentioned, in the interim, is this an interim measure, meaning that reducing the property tax rate, is it that next year the government will be coming back and taking it back to the level that you intended it to take it this year?
One of the things that I don't do about the future is predict it, but one of the things I like to do is to remember that a government is a very political animal. We have things that are called election. I can only do certain things at certain times, and it doesn't make sense if I want to be able to continue to govern. That's why we want to get this out of the way. This was too long. If we put it off for another 2 years, what are we going to do? We're going to still have a bigger problem.
Apart from that, I mean, I think what this situation shows us is that our democracy works.
Wonderfully.
And that I think is very important.
And one of the things I want to say, people, especially on the other side, have been saying, "Oh, you're raising the property taxes because of your 1.5. The 1.5, incidentally, that everybody who gets it loves it, except possibly politicians on the other side." So all the Jamaicans who have gotten this, they are spending their money, they are helping their kids, and this property tax has nothing to do with the 1.5, because, as you know, Dennis, you know, Eddie, I know you do your study, Khalil, when you come into these programs and before, property tax goes to the municipalities. They go to fix local roads, fix street lights, to collect garbage, and you don't have enough money to do what you have to do at NSWA and SWMA, too long. You will change the name, Dennis. The property tax is not used to go to the consolidated fund.
Right,
it's
right.
used to go to look at local issues. So let people not get confused that this has anything to do with 1.5. 1.5 was a great deal that people liked, that we had to find funding because the money that we had planned on was not put away by the previous government.
Although the real issue with property tax, I think, is the compliance thing.
Which we
really
have to increase. We have to improve that.
Address that problem.
We have to improve.
But from a property market point of view, Edwin, what would you say is the vibrancy of that market now? Now that we see some improvement in the economy and things.
Our property market, different segments and different behavior in different segments of the market. I'd say anything up to about 20 million is still hot.
Really?
Yeah. Market is still strong. And then, of course, sometimes we think it's only market in Kingston, talking across the island.
True, that's true.
We're finding a lot of activity all over.
Even the countryside?
Yeah, there's a lot of activity.
A lot of farming, people that consider farming. I have lots of young people in their late 20s and early 30s, seriously going together or singly to start farmland, and they're looking to lease land.
And simple changes like with the NHT has a knock-on effect on the market immediately. So we're seeing low end. There's a lot of activity in the low end. Middle income up to, as I said, up to about 20 million is, of course, I'm seeing 50 million cash sales. I don't know what's happening that end of the market.
Yeah, you have to look at that one now. Cash sale 50 million.
But our market, even
Cash, you can't pay more than 1 million.
even when there was a big meltdown, up north, and their market was wiped out. Our property market, although we weren't as strong as we were before, but we never went anywhere close to what happened over there.
One of the issues that helped in that area was the level of our interest rate. But I want to shift to something that you might find interesting, Edwin, we haven't talked enough about. On the strata properties, what used to happen before we did this revision is you have an acre of land in Norbrook, let's say. It's valued at 100 million. I'm using 100 million because it's easy for the example. 10 of us build a strata building on it. So, and we build 10 buildings of equal size. We all have the same kind of townhouse or apartment, whatever it is, equal size. In the past, before this revision, the taxes would be leveled at the highest end on the 100 million. So if it is, let's say now the new rate is 0.9, 0.9 would be is the tax on the 100 million, apart from the little things that you take out the middle going up. So what we have said now, no, the entitled value that you have, I have, and Edwin has, is that I would pay the property tax of the value of 10 million. Not on the property tax of 100 million. So now you see what that would do. Developers are going to develop more. Younger professionals will be able to probably afford more of those apartments. And in that space, you will see a lot of we expect to see a lot of economic activity because of the change in the property taxes as to how strata properties are handled.
That change has made it more equitable. And it's also supposed to be based on unit entitlement per unit.
That's right.
The developments in stratas had already gone up. And so this would probably...
This is a push to that.
More opportunity there. Okay. But
so investors?
We were very worried. We were very worried about the property market. We were worried that some people who were looking to purchase, and when they heard of the increases in property tax, they had to shy away from the market. Some family lands, people who wanted to sell some family land before, and they were holding on to it. No, they had to sell it.
Right.
So you had some positives and some negatives.
And these are real examples.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, he's in the business. He's underground.
I mean, you really had some people that were seriously worried. They weren't into the political side of the thing. They were just genuinely worried about how they are going to resolve and reconcile
the economics of
it. Even high-end, upper income landowners who have a large portfolio. And if their numbers moved from, say, their costs from maybe 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 million to over 10 million for the portfolio, they would have had some hard choices to make.
Because they don't have the cash flow to support it.
No. So there were some real challenges out there that came all the way down into the middle, and only the very low-end properties that weren't challenged.
But following on that though, you have to admit the PR was very poor around this thing.
I'm not sure what you want to admit to. What I want to say is we listened to the people, and we listened to the people and made a very effective change that I'm quite happy to hear Edwin
But the communication around the initial thing and all of that was very poor.
You know something, Dennis.
The immediate response was that the UA CEO.
I'll give you a challenge. You tell me, in the past 5 years, which two brand new products or entities in the private sector where the PR was handled perfectly? It's very hard.
Yeah.
But we
move fast. I'm being gracious. There are lots of poor things that go on in the private sector.
No, you did move Coquina, but the PR on it was poor though.
Not even many private sector companies could move as fast. We move fast.
I must point out though that while from the low end to the middle, we'll get a lot of relief from this. Yeah. At the higher end, especially over 20 million in property value,
he's absolutely
you're
right.
still up to over 600% increase that
in some instances.
In some instances. So I just want to make that clear that it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah. So you appeal, because the truth is, and people are talking about cap, we can't do a cap when we are in an arrangement with the IMF. It has to be symmetrical. It has to be across. In other words, we can't change the rates for agriculture and commercial, and we'd love to do that. Right now, we couldn't do that. We have to make sure one rate goes across all
the problem, and the appeal process is here. The problem, as always, when you're dealing with government, is the bureaucracy and the time to get things done. It is just
the minister addressed that today. We're putting in a whole different group of people who will assess and make decisions,
make quick decisions.
And for my sins, I will be associated.
Or you will be in charge of it?
I'm not in charge of it. I'll be tax administration hands it.
So we know that you will ensure that it's done properly, because this is going to be very important.
No, I'm going to work with the technical people who many of them are quite good.
Of course,
very good. They understand their business.
The problem I find the public sector is not really the people, it's the systems around them.
You remember you asked me about the land valuation people, and I was very clear.
Yes.
It's not their fault.
Yes.
It is the people who got elected and run those ministries and the government in that instance that was at fault. Don't blame those technocrats.
All right, well, on that note, we have to leave it. Thanks you so much for joining us, Senator Hill and also Mr. Wint. When we come back, we'll have the numbers and your word on the street. Welcome back to On Point. Well, it's all about property taxes this week. Here are the numbers.
Here are the new progressive property tax rates. Properties valued at less than $400,000 will pay a flat fee of $1,000. Properties worth between $400,000 and $800,000 will pay 0.5% on the portion above $400,000. The next band is $800,000 to $1.5 million. This will attract property taxes of 0.55%. The tax rate steps up to 0.6% for properties worth between $1.5 and $3 million. It then increases to 0.65% for properties between $3 million and $4.5 million. As properties enter the $4.5 to $7 million range, they start attracting taxes of 0.7%. At $7 to $12 million, the tax is 0.75%. $12 to $30 million properties are taxed at a rate of 0.8%. And the most expensive properties, those worth more than $30 million, attract 0.9% tax.
And our On Point team hit the streets and asked Jamaicans, are you satisfied with the changes just made to property tax rates?
Yes, I'm glad for the rollback. While I'm not too exact as to the amount of the rollback, but any rollback is good.
Well, I believe that the government rolling back the property tax increase is a good move. That will allow more people to put more people in a better position to be able to pay.
Very happy with the rollback because, especially for a retiree like me, it is a good feeling to, to know that they have rolled it back.
I feel good when my one roll back. It don't roll back as it.
So Dennis, let me ask you the box pop question. Are you satisfied with the change?
I'm satisfied with the response. I mean, I don't know what the details are, but I'm satisfied with the response. And, people say, why commend the government? But the fact of the matter is that they know they shouldn't have done it, but, they went and changed it. So I'm pretty much satisfied. I'm also pleased that Senator Hill said that there would be no makeup of the $2 billion loss.
At least not this year.
Right, given the current circumstances. So I think that's a way for us to move forward now. Let's see what comes out in terms of the details.
Yeah.
And then, we can see what happens from there. And he also said that he's going to ensure that the appeal process happens very quickly. That is also another positive. An additional 200,000 people will actually see a reduction on top of the 200 and I think 90,000 before. So that's definitely good.
It's definitely a move in the right direction because how it was structured initially, the vast majority of people would have been seeing increases and many of them sharp
and
increases.
Significant increases.
And now the majority of people, not the vast majority, just over 50%, I think it's 53%, will not be seeing decreases. So that's a big difference. That's a big change.
And the truth is that I don't think it was necessary it's not a revenue measure. I don't think that was necessary because the way the economy is going, the way tax collections have been going, the move towards indirect taxes, which increases compliance, I think we're going to come out on top again this year. We said last year we came out about $6 billion above projected in terms of taxes. I think it's going to improve even further this year, once we start making that move even more.
Yeah, we have been doing quite well on actually over-collecting on most of the taxes. So with the increased compliance measures,
increased economic growth.
Increased growth, the impact of the 1.5 phase 2.
Yes, and increased economic activity. I know certainly, we have been seeing it in terms of the response from our members in the private sector, especially Montego Bay. So I expect that we'll have a good 2017. Everything is subject to the condition of what happens in the U.S., of course.
Well, that's another matter for another show. You could go on and on about that, but that's our show for this evening. I want to thank you yet another week for joining us here on Point. To our hardworking production team, I'm Kalila Reynolds.
And I'm Dennis Chung. Until next week.
On Point was brought to you by National Baking Company.